Meeting is called to order at 4:02. The roll call, Chair Frank Bertin is present. Dr. Jones, are you present?
I am present.
Birgit Schilcher, are you present? I see you. Joe Franco, are you present?
I'm present.
Perfect. I'd like to change the agenda again to allow for, we have public comments on the Finance Committee on general items. We have 2 sections already in.
Yeah,
thank you. Much
up.
appreciated. So with that, we go into public comment. Public, please go ahead, and Casey, please administer. Thank you.
So in lieu of a sign-up sheet, if you would like to make public comment during this portion, go ahead and click raise hand. And for anyone who needs a reminder, if you click on participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then raise hand is at the bottom of that tab. And then I'll call on your name and lower your hand when it's your turn to speak. And forgive me just 1 second. I'm going to admit a few more people. Angel, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to come speak to the Finance Committee today and as well as address the board about the discussion regarding the possible elimination of staff positions at our school in preparation for next school year. I wanted to speak as a teacher at Goethe for over 10 years, as well as the IB coordinator, and just give that perspective that, Goethe is a really special place. And I think what we have committed ourselves to possibly contributes to some of the budget concerns we have every year. We have high standards in terms of the program that we offer to students and families. And some of the cuts that have been discussed in particular to our program, our specials teachers, our instructional assistants, our SEL support, and coordinator positions. These are, while some may think of them as non-essential programs, maybe that's so in a traditional setting, but our school is a not traditional school, and we've chosen a path, and for some of these cuts to be coming up as realistic budget solutions is really concerning, not just from a human perspective and because of out of concern for my colleagues, but really as concern of stripping away and chipping away at this program that everyone has worked so hard to build. Our curriculum is complex, and I'm not just speaking from a teacher or coordinator opinion, but it is an IB requirement that we show from leadership and in our budget that we have the structures in place for teachers to have collaborative planning time that is outside of classroom teaching time. That's not after school, but it's built into the daily schedule. When we talk about cutting the arts program, PE, or Spanish, essentially what you're saying to teachers is that we're taking away the supports that you need to teach in a collaborative and inquiry-based way. I've been at this school for a long time, and I've seen many forms of schedule, and even today with the amount of specials and preparation time that teachers have, it is used to the max for all of the tasks that they have to do. I've said it time and time again, our school is special for many reasons, and our staff works particularly harder than a traditional school setting, because we are in and of itself our own school district. We're running our own school district, we're running an elementary school, and we're trying to add a middle school. And I just wanted to respectfully remind everyone that as an IB World School, which I think we're pretty proud to be and would like to maintain, there are certain commitments that we have made in that. If we choose that program, that means that we have committed ourselves to teach a holistic curriculum that includes all of those subject areas, not just core academic subjects, but that include the arts, language acquisition, physical education, health, and social emotional learning. So I just wanted to speak on that and say that I think that when we are looking at cutting programs like that, they shouldn't be seen as non-essential. They are absolutely essential to who we are as a program and who we claim to be when we are reaching out to the public to ask people to join our community.
Angel, thank you for your comment, but I would like to remind everybody we have 3 minutes per speaker, I guess. And so please be mindful that others can speak too. Thank you for your comment.
And Beacon?
Hi, thank you, Angel, for that. It's so helpful when thinking about the core of our school and what makes up the trunk of our school and what are the potential branches that could be cut, rather than working away at what makes our school, what draws people to us. You know, the IB and the social emotional learning are such an integral part of who we are, who we say we are, who we want to be. And for these reasons, I once again, speak for our consultant, Chris Massey Rhodes, who has been at our school for many, many years, who has been our go-to person in times of crisis and in times of transition, and who our kids need now more than ever. I really want to back a budget that supports the core of our program. I see IB, I see supporting social emotional learning and other things being almost strangled. And as Angel so eloquently pointed out, with all the teachers working as hard as they are on these basic things, where will they find the time? Where will they find the energy? My co-chair of the Social Emotional Learning Committee and I do not believe that the teachers or the administrative team have the bandwidth to assist with social emotional learning on their own. And I believe that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
And I cannot raise my hand as the host, but I'd also like to speak at public comment. So I'm Casey Jones, I'm the principal, and kind of along the same lines as what Angel and Beacon have shared about the important aspects of our school, I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the proposed items up for discussion with the budget and provide some clarification. And that's with our SEL program as a whole. So as a kindergarten teacher, before I moved up to LA, I experienced firsthand how important it is to provide our students with the support for their social and emotional development. And just like with any academic growth, they need tools and resources to help them with regulating and identifying their emotions. And that's the focus that GICS had, is what made me, one of the things that made me want to come work at this school and why I've continued to stay. But I do want to just clarify that our school's social emotional learning program is comprehensive and has many different components. We've got our Caring School community curriculum, which has resources for all of our staff for class meetings, positive reinforcement, and conflict resolution. We do PD and collaborative planning, as Angel mentioned, all throughout the year with our staff, and we focus on academics, but also on our social and emotional support for students. Our school-wide discipline policy itself is one that focuses on positive behavior supports and interventions. We have systems set up in the classrooms, like our Peace Corners for regular use for students. And then we also have our incredibly committed SEL team of parents who work with staff on a regular basis to make sure that we're providing as many opportunities for that support as we can. And then we also have this consultant position with Chris Massey Rhodes. And while this is such a wonderful resource, and as Beacon put it, it's very needed in times of crisis, this is just one component of our SEL program. So I just want to remind the committee, as you guys are discussing and making deliberations, that that particular item is not the same as a discussion of our entire SEL program, but just one component of it. And as we look at making cuts to many different programs that are very hard to make and things that all of our students and staff work with on a daily basis, just to keep that in mind. And next up, Insa.
Hello, I'm Insa Kasai. I'm the art teacher, and I have already publicly spoken in the last meeting, so I would like to give my time to Angel Trong. I think she wanted to add a little bit more, and I'm going to just give my 3 minutes to her, if that's okay.
Hi, sorry. Just a couple more points in that. Cutting our specials program, again, not only would take away our collaborative planning structures during the day, but you're also then asking homeroom classroom teachers to teach 2 to 3 more additional subjects to their curriculum already, so that we're not only taking away collaborative planning time, which is so essential, not just for the inquiry-based curriculum, which is homegrown. You know, this is not out of, there's plenty of planning to do, even with curriculum out of a textbook or a box. But all of our teachers and grade level teams create curriculum, and they also teach immersion language, and that in and of itself, having a teaching partner and sharing classes requires a lot of time to talk and plan and create the best program possible. And that's really what our school is all about. It's really a huge undertaking of effort and a lot of love and care from our teachers. So I just wanted to also point that out, that it would be a real challenge to continue to teach in the same way without those programs in place. And I, just on a personal level, I think, and I've stood before the board in this way before, a couple of years ago. Anytime we talk about cutting staff positions, it's a really, I think, demoralizing and often sometimes humiliating experience to have your position called into question, and all the hard work that you have already done kind of feels like unappreciated and unseen. So I just want to, and I hope that moving forward we can somehow continue to acknowledge that and understand that these are our colleagues, and they have families and they have to consider their future. So when we're talking about cutting staff positions, you know, it's not an abstract thing. These are people who matter a lot to our school and to our students. So, thank you.
Claudia, go ahead.
Hi, now you should be able to hear me. Hi, I'm a parent. I've had I now have a 6th grader who's no longer with the school, and a 3rd grader. And so I've been with the school for a long time, and I saw music education go away, which was very sad to see. So now today, I just wanted to make a comment in regards of the possibility of art education also being cut. And I wanted to say, first and foremost, thank you to all the teachers. It's just been an incredible experience where you just did not miss a beat, and we are learning despite this distant learning. It's incredible to be at Goethe at this time, especially. And one of the things we've really enjoyed, especially in this stressful time, is the art education with Frau Kasai. She has just been wonderful just throughout the years, but especially at this time too. It's an opportunity for our children not only to express themselves and to learn about art, but also she does this entirely in German. So our students also have the opportunity to do this in German and to talk to one another about pencils and crayons and paper and all this stuff, which doesn't really happen in a regular classroom where it's all about math and German language and grammar. So I just wanted to express how important I think it is to keep art and to keep Frau Kasai's art program that she has created, that it creates a stress relieving situation for our children and a confidence building one as well. And yeah, I think that's my whole point, that she has created an incredible program that is doing our children a lot of good in a lot of different ways. So, and I would hate to see her go, especially after we've already seen the music program go. So to me, to compare it to my now 6th grader who has had this well-rounded education at Goethe, including art and music, and then compare it to my now 3rd grader where it's in danger of continuing. I do understand that cuts have to be made in order for Goethe to continue at all. So obviously I do understand that, but I want to make the point that art, the way it is at Goethe, is incredible. And if at all possible, we should be able to keep it. Thanks.
Heidi, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of let the finance committee know that while cutting is needed, especially during this time, and we all know that we have to do a lot of cutting, it's going to hurt. I do want them to hear that while we're going to miss, if you choose to cut Chris Macy Rhodes, while she's a true loss, I have been flabbergasted with how amazing the teachers as a whole have embraced SEL, have been more aware of mental wellness, have had all these opportunities in the classroom. And I've also been incredibly impressed with the parents on the SEL committee. They've been fantastic, so fantastic that I've actually forwarded almost every email they've sent to my administration saying, this is what we should be sending. So I think her legacy and will live on. Like I just think she's had a phenomenally positive impact on our school. And that makes me really happy. And it also makes me confident that if we are unable to keep her, that will be okay. And I said the same thing last week, but I really think we need to keep our specials, especially if we lose Chris Macy Rhodes, which is just for mental well-being, especially for physical well-being, just a little plug. But I've already said that.
And there is no other public comment at this time.
Perfect. Thank you for the thoughtful comments by the public. They are duly noted, and of course will always make an impact when we discuss these things. So thank you very much. With that, we're going to go over to item 3. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda as presented?
I so move.
I second. I'll do the roll call. Dr. Jones?
Aye.
Biggie? Biggie?
Muted, Biggie.
She said aye. She mimicked aye.
I didn't know that I muted. I guess.
Aye. Joe?
Aye.
Okay. Item 4, approval of meetings is not consent. It's not a consent item of meeting minutes from 5/22/2020. Do I have a motion?
I motion.
You move. I second. I do the roll call. Dr. Jones?
Aye.
Biggie?
I.
Joe?
Aye.
And Frank is aye. Motion carries. Item 5, items for discussion and action. Item A, 2020-2021 preliminary budget discussion. I'm handing it over to,
Quick.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to remind you that Ryan has to leave at 4:30. So if we have any question, I think he might be able to come back after another meeting, but just so that everybody's aware that he has to leave shortly.
Right. Okay. We can't change that. So it is what it is. Item 5, items for discussion and action. I handed over without any additional comments. I handed over to Chris Jones. Chris Jones, your floor.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Well, first of all, again, I'm grateful that there are so many people taking an interest, and it doesn't make it easier, but it does make it better to have more voices and more people showing interest in our school and what we're doing. So I thank you for that, for joining us right now. These are tough times that we are facing. I've talked about this before, that this just hasn't happened before to the level that we're dealing with it right now. And we were coming off of an unbalanced budget to begin with. So keeping in mind that we did create what we thought was a really fair and balanced budget that we'd been working on for a month and a half, that was based on a -2. That's the budget that we are adjusting or talking about adjustments to that get us to the point where what the governor has recommended, which is a -10 budget. And so all of the potential cost savings, reductions, cuts, whatever you want to call them, all of them are in mind of trying to keep fiscal solvency for the school. And the question has come up as to, in the past, we've had negative budgets before, and we've survived them. We've also had, we have brought our reserve down considerably in the past few years to where we don't have a big pot of money that's protecting us. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, if we when we get to the point of the budget where it was -477, which was the amount that we showed it as when you took the 10% off, we would be out of money in 2 years. So the question of whether there is the possibility of doing any kind of deficit budget, it won't be looked at well by LA Unified when it comes time for our renewal of a charter, because last year we were 401,000 of a negative budget. My sense is, and we'll have to play this out, but I think there is some room. And what we had put forth, I've said this the last time, what we had put forth as between cutting from where we're at between $335,000 and $350,000, I think we're in a spot where the budget will survive. But it still means the cuts will need to be taken in future years, or we need to drive enrollment up greatly to make that happen. But I'm very wary about what was just spoken, of not gutting the heart and soul of our program so that it's unrecognizable to us and it's unrecognizable or uninteresting to others who might want to come here, which then creates yet another financial problem, is that we don't have enrollment. So we're playing a balancing act. We're kind of on a tightrope here, and we're trying to figure this out. So again, thank you for being a part of this process. What the process is today, what I hope to do is have the Finance Committee make a recommendation at the end of this meeting that will go forward to the Board of Education, Board of Trustees, on their meeting that they've scheduled for Friday at 4 o'clock. The meeting at Friday at 4 o'clock is a special meeting where we're going to discuss the budget and with the board, and that they would give direction for the parameters for us as administration to make the final budget that gets approved in June. So that's our steps and our process that we're going through right now. And this, what we're doing right now, is a very important piece of the process. Since we met last Friday, many of you were here, and we were here very late, past 6 o'clock. We had a whole list of things, and we'd gone through them line by line and talked about some that were not realistic or would not get funding for us, and some others that seemed like really good ideas that we hadn't thought of, that were kind of maybe low-hanging fruit, easy pickings. And so we also gathered information from staff in both a survey and talking to people individually and talking to the staff as a group. So we got a lot of good information. We were asked by our chair, Frank, to go back and give another try. We had given our suggestions to the board back on May 18th, and now we have more information. So he said, give it another try and fill out the blanks of option 1 and option 2 as a place for us to start our discussion. So if you recall, we had information that was down there, which was option 1, which was, we said, kind of the nuclear option, which would get us to a zero balance, but probably would cut pretty deep. And then there was an option 2 that would still have major cuts, but wouldn't quite be at the balance level. So Casey, are you able to pull that up? I also want to explain what we did. Across the top, you can see the potential reduction and the amount of savings that's listed there. And then it says admin on 5/18. That's what we had suggested to the board on May 18th. The next 2 columns are option 1 and option 2. As I said, option 1 gets us, is more extreme than option 2. And it doesn't mean that that's finalized. This is just a starting point for our discussion. We had the notes that we had from there. And we also had, under rating, we'd had an impact level. And there were initially 5 rating levels or areas that I had suggested we look at. They include staff retention and morale, quality of educational program, future enrollment, and health and safety of students. There was also a 5th one that said fiscal impact, but we felt that was kind of on the opposite way of looking. These are impacts that negatively impact, and everything we were talking about here as a fiscal impact can be seen under whether the amount of money that you put. So under option 1 or option 2, you can see the fiscal impact. So we made judgment calls on different impacts and made a total of what the impact is. In other words, the higher the total, potentially the higher the impact. This is not a perfect science. In fact, it's a very imperfect science. But I think it does give you a sense of something that seems to have a really high impact or a really low impact, from at least, and that's only from administrative input of those impact totals. So there's nothing that says that's right or wrong. It's just where we had put it. So I'm going to talk about this a little more. And we'll go through what our suggestions were and how we came to them. Any questions on how I've set this up, and how this was filled out by administration in preparation for this meeting? Joe or Frank? Any questions on how it's
no questions from no questions regarding the methodology. I would suggest if we do the same procedure like last time, we'll let you go through the entire thing in one iteration, And everybody please note their questions. And then we can go back to the questions. But I would suggest that we see your whole
In entirety.
suggested holistic program. And then we will go from there. Yeah, if that is okay with everybody.
Yeah, no questions for me. Listen to that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a good idea. So there were. This was prompted by an email or an email that was sent from Frank as the head of the committee to try to build this out and flesh it out. So I'm glad that this meets with your approval, Frank, because it came from your idea. I'm going to start then in the same way I did before. Line items 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all somewhat connected in that we did not feel we could do all of them. We have to select which one. And so in the more nuclear option 1, we put down the cuts that we had initially suggested, because it was a larger amount. It's also a for sure amount. We can do this. There's no legislation required. And so we felt that that was what we needed to put down for the most extreme option. It was the 149. If I compare that to option 2, the comparison is 110 plus 24,000, 110 being a 2-week furlough for every staff member, including administration. And to help balance it out, administration would make an additional 5% pay cut on their own that would save about $24,000. That is essentially what was being offered in the across the board pay cuts, with 5% for staff and 10% for administration. So that was the idea of keeping those pretty much an apples to apples comparison. So that's the beginning of what we put together, and the difference being in the more extreme, we went with the less risky and the more a higher amount of 149 versus 110 and 24 for an equal 134. So it's about a $15,000 difference that's less when we choose that. Okay. The very next line, the reason why it was marked in red, this was one that Frank had just marked on his own, and we wanted to honor that he had put that. He had put that as something he wanted to think about. Was the 0.5 custodial staff, and that would be we budgeted that at 38,000. So we did not put that in either one of the options, and you can look to reasons and impact that it was a high impact item, and that with health and safety, I have a very hard time in any way reducing. I think we're gonna we might be in a situation where we've got to actually somehow add, and I don't know where that money is coming from, but to cut away custodial at this time just seems to me unwise. The next one down, line 10, you'll notice, or you might notice, that it actually said 7,500 before, and we double checked on that, and in comparison to the budget actually only had it in as 7,200. So we made that change. So this elimination of the contract, we had agreed as administration on 5/18 that was one of the things we had suggested. In the option 1, it is still listed there as one of the things we suggested. However, in option 2, that's not a typo where it says instead of 7,200, it says 2,700. That was a savings that could be realized if instead of the 40 days of the contract, it was a reduction of the contract to 25 days. And we felt that was a pretty realistic way to kind of balance out what we've been hearing quite a bit about the importance, especially for specialized events, grieving and situations like that. So that was an idea that wasn't there last Friday, and I wanted to be sure that was understood what that is and how that would affect. So it shows up as the full elimination in option 1. It shows up as a reduction in option 2. Okay, moving down on number 11. This was a thought of changing out water. We did not put this in either option 1 or option 2. And our reasoning was health and safety concerns for students as well as staff. Not just morale, but real making sure of having safe water that is close by and available. I think it's I think personally it's just a health and safety issue. Number 12. These would be those stipends we talked about. Not a huge amount of money, but certainly something that is would have an impact. It would have an impact on teachers who are doing split assignments. It would have an impact on teachers who have done yearbook in the past, and we'd have to come up with a different approach for doing yearbook. We did include that in both options 1 and options 2. In the same way, the elimination of contracts for MYP vendors. This was a tough one because of trying to build out the middle school, and it was part of the vision of what how middle school would be built out. That being said, we're in really difficult times, and we have to figure out how we can take care of the entire program. And the middle school is not the entire program, but it is an important part of that program. We do believe very fully that we have expertise on our staff that we can tap into to make this work for our middle school students. But that is going to be some restructuring and some difficulty on staff. Line 14. Reduction in hours of office clerk position. We think this is from an administrative standpoint, we think this is a very high impact on how people are greeted, how people are welcome to the school, as well as a health and safety issue, particularly at lunchtime and recess. This is the front line of kids with the bloody noses and kids with whatever ailment ails them. And so, well, in the more nuclear option, option 1, we did put that in. In option 2, we did not. In line 13, we put that as not applicable, and we did not put that in because we just don't think we can realize savings from that, from a part-time position, unless the stars aligned and we were able to have 2 people who took it and it was in a spot that we could change something in the master schedule to make it work. We just didn't see that as necessarily possible. Line 16. This was extremely tough to be discussing. From my perspective, instructional aides play an extremely important part of our program. We, in the nuclear option, included those in option 1 and option 2. In option 2, we did not put them in there. So that's line 16 and 17 together. One was for a part-time and one was for a full-time transition, full-time to part-time, and the savings that would occur from those. Line 18, the reduction of an MYP teacher going from 3 to 2. Again, we're trying to build out a middle school program, and that was our initial intent, was to really give it that extra push this coming year. And with a negative 2% budget, we thought we were able to do that. We were able to do that. But given the cuts that we're facing, our enrollment, we feel, does not sustain being able to hold 3 teachers at middle school. So we are recommending in both options the reduction of that position. In number 19, in the same way, we had included this in the -2 budget because it's important and because it is what is going to build us to our future. But we have to deal with the realities that we're in right now. And this is a large amount that is able to be cut at this time in both option 1 and option 2, according to what we put forward. Very difficult, but a choice we felt we had to make. And connected to that is line 20, which is $8,000 off of from IB language coordinators and a stipend revision. Line 21, this was one of those good, easy pickings. And if you notice, it has a bunch of zeros there for impact. It does not have a high impact. We felt it had limited impact. Maybe there would be some sort of effect on participation, but we really didn't think so. So we put it in both option 1 and option 2 for sure. It seemed like a good idea. Lines 22 and 23 were, again, I mentioned the last time, we don't realize any savings from cutting instructional supplies because we have to spend a certain amount in instructional supplies. So with no savings, we did not put those into either option. Line 24, we have a plan for increasing our independent studies. And we came up with a number based on, if we set it at $50 a day, estimating 200 students, bringing just 1 more day of independent study per year. But how do we do that? It's by creating an online system for teachers and parents, and for our coordinator of that, which is Christiane, to be able to completely streamline the process so that it is not the hassle that causes teachers not wanting to follow through, or parents not wanting to follow through, kids not wanting to follow through. All those pieces tie into it. This was a pretty high goal, and it's going to be a tough one to meet, but we think we can do it. And so that was a pretty major piece that we're talking about, and we need to adjust that. We put that in both option 1 and option 2. Moving down, again, at instructional supplies with no realized savings, so that one's off. Line 26, $4,000 to completely rethink the way we do our copies. We're currently not making any copies at school. We're on distance learning, but we're able to do things in a different way. And we need to bring back some of that to next year when we are on campus. Hopefully when we're on campus. When we're in that situation, we're going to need to change the way we've done things in the past, and copy usage is one we're willing to invest or say in our budget we're going to change. And along with that is a reduction in office supplies, which also can be offset by asking parents to provide copy paper, because we still will need copy paper. We're just going to try to reduce the amount. So those are pretty big savings. One is on the cost of the copy machines, and the other is in supplies, but they're tied together. We put those in both option 1 and option 2. Next, on line 28, not applicable incentives for not using health benefits. We could not figure out a way to make that work in the budget or save us money in the budget. Line 29, using Scholastic dollars for non-book items already in the budget. This would be for buying things like when we need to buy an LCD projector, or when we need to buy a document camera, or some different things that are available in the Scholastic catalog, that we would be buying those instead of items already budgeted. So it's a lofty goal at 2,000. We recognize that, but we're going to try to meet that. No monetary benefit of turning classroom 45 into a classroom. Although in the budget there are, we're still trying to push forward with increasing between 1 and 2 classrooms to get us back to our total our current footprint. And so that's we didn't see where we would be able to put that in right at this point. Line 31, canceling of after-school events, a whole bunch of them there. And we mentioned this the last time. It's a very high impact, especially on enrollment. Events like Lantern Fest, events like International Flair are recruiting tools that would be missed out. And the $1,500 in savings is just simply not worth it in our opinion. We left it off of both option 1 and option 2. Math consumable books, again, it's an instructional materials issue, so not applicable when it wouldn't get the savings on that. Line 33, negotiate phone service, renegotiate phone service. Biggie and Del Tecchis are working on that. We feel we're going to be able to do that, so we put it into both at 3,600. Line 35, line 34. And line 35 and line 36 all need to be considered together and thought of together. This is, I think, when I think of the heart and soul of the school, here is a really big piece of the heart and soul of the school. And I think that was mentioned time and again. I've gotten lots of comments and emails and discussion about this. With that being said, we had to look at it. Is this something that is part of potential cuts? And I'll start with art because it's the one that sort of is not as central as it is to what we're talking about. It is not as it's not specifically in the charter as it stands, and it is it's not specifically required in that way by IB. So that being said, it was the opinion of our administration that it should not be included in either option 1 or option 2 as a reduction. Similarly, in line 35, we had the same issues, particularly because this is one that crosses over so many different pieces, and 3rd through 5th grade Spanish is just one piece of a complex position and a whole number of things that we value and need within our program. It probably had a little more leeway than perhaps PE or art next to it. And in option 1, we did put it as part of that option. In option 2, we did not put it as part of the option. In line 36, PE, again, related to impact on students, impact on enrollment. These are things that people talk about. These are things that get people to come to the school, is our PE and Spanish and art. We did not put PE as a recommendation into either option 1 or option 2. So in line 37, if you could scroll up just a little. Line 37, there was $9,500 that would potential savings for not going forward with the MYP candidacy and dropping our candidacy, which would mean starting over and being 3 years out from the time if we ever started again. This was not something we felt like we reduced the MYP program by reducing teachers. We reduced the MYP program by reducing outside consultants, but the MYP candidacy itself is what the school is all about. And so we did not put that into option 1 or option 2. Line 38, the elimination of teacher induction. Well, it maybe doesn't have a total number of high impact. We felt the impact on morale and staff retention was very significant. That this is something that there is has been done in past years for teachers who have already gained this, and that would be cut out at this point. Was felt we did not feel that was to be put into either one. So let's look at the totals. Starting with the savings column, that's not an actual number of savings because many of those are redundant. So, you know, the things that were up at the top, those were redundant. We weren't never planning on having, we weren't really looking at that much amount of savings, but I wanted to point that out. In the administration, we had initially done 335,000. That's 334,700 now because of we made the adjustment on the SEL contract to make it accurate. The option 1, as presented, brings us to 469,500. That brings us to a balance. A balance would be negative. We're negative 477 is what we're at. So that brings us within $8,000 of break even. The benefits of that are that we're actually on the road to recovery, even during tough times. And even after making cuts that went into the -2 budget, we're able to start turning the corner now on what has been a 4-year problem in our school budget. This will be viewed very highly. It's expected from LAUSD that we have a balanced budget every year. We've chosen, in some cases, to spend down some of the money in a logical fashion. But this brings us to the point where we're back on solid ground. Option 2 gets us 341,000 off of 477,000. And I'm sorry, we've moved these numbers around. Biggie, can you do a calculation on that? 477 minus 341. I don't have it in my head.
It's 136.
So 136 to the negative. That is not great, but it's a heck of a lot better than we've been. And I do not think it will it will bankrupt us in 2 years the way the 477 would. It still makes me nervous that we haven't fully righted the ship. But considering all we have working against us in this budget cycle, it may be something we can consider, or we can add to it if we want to make it a little bit larger. But I do not, under any circumstances, think it should be smaller than the number that's listed there. So those are my thoughts. From the committee, I'm open to questions.
I'm gonna, you guys have developed the budget. I'm sorry, we're just letting the dog in who's outside, who was barking. I apologize for the noise. You guys have developed the budget. I have looked at it a little bit more. I want to give Joe the opportunity. I have only 4 questions and a preference to articulate. So therefore, I want to give Joe the first step at it. Please, Joe.
Sure. I mean, they're both really option 2 is very, very reasonable, probably more realistic in terms of keeping our program together, keeping, you know, on and balancing all these different impacts, the health and safety, enrollment, educational programs, staff retention. Obviously, you know, keeping the middle school, the IB program, Spanish and lower grades is extremely important for education. Is there any way we can kind of maybe kind of sort by, you know, not to get too complicated with Excel, but kind of sort by option 2, just the option 2 in one snapshot?
I'm going to defer to Casey.
Sorry, Joe, can you repeat the request? I was handling participants.
Sorry.
Can you just put filters on top of it at the bottom line, and then you can store it. You can sort all kinds of way. So click on put filters.
Yeah. So, sorry, sir. Yeah. So just filter it so we can see like just option 2 in a snapshot. Like anything that's in the option 2 in column E, can we filter in a way so we only see the option 2 effect?
Yeah, but the filter needs to go into on option. You need to go on, yes, there, and then hit filters, add filters, and then it does it for all the work. Oh. Because you have merged fields.
Merge,
so that
yeah.
but
I can, I'll just do it manually really quick.
What is it, Joe, that you want to see?
Just be able to filter so we can see option 2 only, option 1 only, maybe sort by like the total number in column L. Yeah,
so we do. So we have a sort by the total number here, which has, these are the low impact, and then going up until you get to the NAs.
So let's go from the highest impact first, so all the way down. So of those top 4, are any of those in option 2? 1 to 5, PE we're not. Full-time IAs, is that in option 1?
No.
Elimination of IAs.
It's in option 1, not in option 2.
Okay. And then what about 5R? No, that's not at all. And 2, what about the 2 elimination contract of 2 part-time IAs? Is that in option 1? Or option 2, sorry, is that option 2? Okay. That's kind of what I wanted to see. So Casey, kind of offline later, I can help you play with kind of like the Excel so people can kind of filter and sort and stuff. We can kind of see impacts by preference. So yeah, no, that looks great. Thank you. So other than that, I don't have any questions or comments.
So I'd like to make a couple of, again, you know, I'd like to express my preference for option 2. I want to make 2 comments on that, you know, because I think option 2 gives us more runway. We have more runway. We don't need to respond immediately, right? Because it's basically the furlough option. If for what reason soever the governor decides not to cut by 10% and only by 5%, it would be enough, one. If there is some political movement, which may or may not happen, I'm not a politician, but that gives us the option rather than to respond harshly, one. Two, I think in regards to LAUSD, we understand that we are likely that the budget assumptions are very conservative. I think in order to balance the budget, we can go back and increase our revenue by increasing the fundraising goal only as it matters when we submit to LAUSD. Whether this is a realistic goal, I don't know, but it's a possibility to balance the budget on that notion by increasing the revenue on the fundraising by another. We currently have 436 in. I think if we can go bold and it just increases a little bit and you know, and hope for the best, that could be one option. But that's just here nor there. I just wanted to point that out, that this is a possibility from a mechanical point of view to make the budget work for option 2. I prefer, again, option 1, but I have comparative questions. So when it comes to impact, so the furloughs get an educational rating, and get you an educational rating or quality of education from 2. And so does the MYP, the elimination of the MYP contracts. I'm not an educator and I'm not sure how to run it. Why? Can you give me some background on those? Why is it both a 2 and not a 3? That's what I'm asking. So what is the backup plan for these things? If we do for the furloughs, what does it mean for the children, for the education? Isn't it a 3 or is it a 2? So that's basically my question. That's it. I'm asking for an explanation of your subjective rating. Is there a possibility you can elaborate on that?
Biggie, do you want to chime in on that one?
Well, I can. I'm not an educator either. So, so I'm with Frank there. No, I mean, a 2 for the furloughs. It's because it has impact that the students have less instructional days. So it means that for the educational program, there will be some quality impact, but we think that with what teachers can restructure during the educational time, it's not a 3 of an impact.
Okay.
Because we would still get stuff done, but it would definitely be 10 days less of instructional time. So you can't debate that off. That's
okay. So there's evidence, and with the MYP contract that also carries a 2, same impact appears to be.
We think that we can have a very good plan in place that we would do it in-house, that with our own teachers we can offer the electives or exploratory for the MYP. However, it would still not be something that we could offer when we buy very specific content from the outside. That's why it's a 2 and not a that's why it's even a 2, because we discussed before we can offer exploratory, so it could even be a 1, but we cannot offer the wide range of offerings that we could do if we bought very specific things from the outside. Casey, maybe you can add something as the educator specialist.
Biggie, you said it wonderfully.
I know Angel is, and for my education, Angel is on the call. Angel, I know I want to reach out to you. I want to get your opinion on the MYP contracts, and what do you think about that? I'm overstepping a little bit my boundaries, but would you mind elaborating on this if you could?
Sure, we're talking about the item of just the MYP contracts for exploratories, right? Not the
yes, not the candidates, yeah.
No, I agree. Myself and Frau Kasai this year taught collectively a semester of the exploratories, and I think we were successful. I mean, as far as we could tell by student engagement and meeting those IB standards way ahead of the target time. For us to be teaching the whole exploratory wheel, all 8 subject areas in a candidacy year is quite impressive. I mean, this is not expected until you are ready to authorize. So, I think in a year like this, and with, as we've said, a staff that has a lot of different talents and effort, we're used to creating new curriculum. I think it could be
I think we lost her. Hello?
Hi, sorry.
I think we lost you.
I think your
Yeah,
last
we
sentence
did
was cut
the
off.
last sentence we didn't hear.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying that I think we had a successful run at teaching the exploratories. The kids did enjoy the vendors, but for us, I think we have enough talent in-house to do that. Our teaching staff is used to and very well versed in creating interesting and new curriculum. And I think that would be, I think we're way ahead of the curve here for us to be teaching all 8 content areas of the MYP in a candidacy year is already quite impressive.
Right, okay.
Really required until we are authorizing.
Thank you, Angel. My next question is also directed towards the educational team and not hiring, not hiring the PYP and the MYP. They carry an overall value. The PYP carries an impact value of 3, while the MYP carries an impact value of 8. Why is that? These appear to be 2. Yeah.
So, I mean, I can respond to the MYP reduction. It's one of those things that it can have an effect on all of those different areas. The quality of education, we felt that by putting that extra person in there, the purpose of it was to really boost the quality of education. We felt that that was going to help us with future enrollment specific to the middle school, and that it would be impactful across the board. So that's where that those numbers are fairly high. We didn't feel it had any health and safety implications, but it did have some pretty big implications. I would have said the exact same thing last year at this time, which is when we had 2 teachers slotted for middle school in 6th grade. And we got to a point where enrollment and at that point it was a much less enrollment, but the enrollment wasn't justifying it. And in the same way, the amount of folks that or students that we are expecting is around 30, whereas it was 20 the year before. But enrollment does not appear to be enough to warrant that extra teacher. So that's where that one came from. The implication for the PYP position is very much around the quality of education of program. And I think it may be understating the future enrollment, because I think in the long run, this would affect enrollment. But it's immediately, that's not something that people are going to know or think about whether they enroll next year in terms of enrollment. So that was the only thinking, was just an immediate. I do think it has an effect larger in the long term.
Thank you for your answer. And the fourth question is really not about a comparative rating, comparative ratings question. It's about eliminating the IAs. From prior discussions within the school community, from prior budget years, I know that these IAs are desired. There are, are they a nice have? Are they a must have? Can the educators elaborate about the elimination of the IA's positions?
I'll start off, but I'll ask others to chime in. Casey, certainly, if you want to add something. We previously had a level of instructional aides going back a few years that I personally, and I've looked back at this stuff, I think was completely unsustainable. And the reductions that were made, painful and had a definite effect on the school. I think those were the right decisions at that time. I believe we're at a point where we're just about at the minimum that we could stand to lose with regards to instructional aides, because I think there's definitely a requirement that we have for student safety that is out on recess and out at lunch and at valet and all the different pieces that I think are really, really important. Is there some kind of potential of elimination? Yes, not enough that I thought it went over the top to warrant. And you can see that we had rated those as pretty highly impactful across a lot of different areas. Casey, you want to add your thoughts?
Yeah, I think our IA positions are super important for our safety of students, like Chris mentioned before and after school with our valet, but also throughout the school day in terms of recess and lunch supervision and providing that support of a known staff member for those kids, especially our youngest ones when they're first starting out at school. And additionally, they help take on a lot of the load of the recess supervision. So we have a rotating schedule currently where teachers have to do a recess supervision once, maybe twice a week, but usually just once, because our instructional aid staff does that every day. So if that's removed, then that again impacts the planning time and the prep time that our teachers have, because now they would have to take on more of that supervision support. And then within the classroom, and we've talked about this at board meetings, you can always do more when you have another adult, especially in those younger grades. So with TK and kindergarten in particular, there are a lot of urgent needs that come up, such as bathroom accidents. They're learning how to be at school and around other people and away from their families and trusted adults. So having that other person in there to help monitor for safety reasons, but also with their academic support has a really big impact.
And then my final question, thank you, Kathy and Dr. Jones. I also, my favorite statement of the Obama administration year, the favorite slogan was hope, right? I love that. That's what draws me into voting Democratic for him, because it's just a polite comment, nonsense lead in. And on the letter of hope, I prefer furlough because it gives us runway. Dr. Jones, are you putting, it's a no-brainer that if funding is restored throughout the year, we're not going to go with furlough. Is there also a plan? Are you working on a plan of how to reestablish services we're cutting on either option 1 or option 2, whatever the board decides, if there were additional funding to be present. Do you have a plan for that already, or are you working on that?
Of what would be reestablished in what order?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, what we need to know is that the first thing is what was directly taken out of pocketbooks,
Right.
which I would recommend if we are doing across the board pay cuts, that's what happens. If we're doing the 2-week furloughs, it starts with we do 1 week furlough if we can afford that. And if we can afford no furloughs, great. And that the next thing would be the 5% pay cut return, because that's all a part of the same thing. But I would do it in that order.
Right.
The piece that is, we need to look at this both ways. If the legislature does not give us a means by which to do furloughs, I think we absolutely need to go the other route, which is the 5% and 10%. I do not expect that to happen. I expect that as they did in 2008, 9, and 9, 10, 10, 11, that they give flexibility to LEAs like us to do furloughs up to 2 weeks. There is no option at that. They did not allow it to go more than 2 weeks. There was no 3-week option in the previous time. I would suspect they do exactly the same thing. But I do want to put it out there. We still need to make up this money. And if we're barred from doing furloughs, we have to go the other route.
Chris,
I don't think we're going to be barred. So that being said, I would say we start with the people that are with the funding that's being taken from people. And if there's beyond that, let's cut that fish up at that time. Not worry about that at the moment, because that's hopeful, and I like hope as well. But I think if we know that our first priority of everything is to bring back the pay cuts or eliminate furloughs, then that's our place to start.
Chris, is there any possibility, if there's only a 1-week furlough, to have a smaller pay cut to balance that out? So 1 week furlough with a smaller pay reduction if you can't get a 2-week furlough?
I think that would be possible if we were barred from doing a 2-week furlough, but we are able to do a 1-week furlough. Yes, I would think we could do a hybrid of that, because that would be more of what staff asked for, which was clear that they wanted to do the furloughs as opposed to pay cuts. And I fully understand that, and at this time fully support that.
Yeah.
So I completed all my questioning. Is there any other questions from the Finance Committee before we go to public comment again?
Nothing for me.
Biggie?
Nothing.
Dr. Jones, you want to make any additional comments?
No, I'm appreciative. Well, I will. What the heck? I'm appreciative of the committee trying to look at kind of hard pieces here. This is something we've been looking at, staring at for months. It's not, it's a scramble because of the recent change, but these are things that have been discussed not just in the past months, but in the past years. And so we're at a point where we need to take some hard choices, but I also think there's a middle ground, and that to me is option 2. So I'm in agreement on that we can choose option 2, and then, but realizing we still have a ways to go before we're even.
So from a technicality, before we go to public comment, and we're only recommending this spreadsheet to be presented to the board, right, to respond.
we're presenting, but we should present it with a recommendation of one
Yeah.
of the two options. But give them the options and show them
Right.
what you're thinking and
Yeah. Okay, so we're presenting both options, and so before we call the vote, so I'll make the roll call in regards. So we have two motions then on the town, right? Is there a preference for option 1 or is there a preference for option 2? So the finance committee needs to come to a conclusion. I want to do that. I want to get the motion on the table first before we go to public comment, before I make the roll call for the vote or the recommendation. Is that okay? Yeah.
Well, what does it say on the agenda?
The agenda says, item 5 is then there's for discussion. Oh, so that's under item 7.
So I think
yeah. Okay,
you
got it staged.
There was discussion, then public comment, then
and then we have two motions. And then we have two motions. Yeah. Okay. Let's do public comment at this stage, and then we draft the motions of what the finance committee is recommending. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Was that Casey?
So again, if anyone wants to make public comment, you'll click on participants and then raise hand. Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment and kind of reiterate what Casey was saying about the IA importance. I guess I am still teaching TK and kindergarten, and I can just attest to the fact that the IA position is extremely vital, especially for, like Casey was saying, the younger grades. Having 2 adults when you're in a room of 20 plus 4- and 5-year-olds is not only super beneficial for their learning, but also just for emergencies. They happen all the time. If people get hurt, bathroom incidences, if there's anything that's going on, they also have a lot of emotional things going on that having 2 adults really is beneficial. So just to say again and kind of back up how important I believe that is for the younger grades especially, but I would say it's just a very important role in general.
Angel?
Hi. A couple of things I also want to say, from having gotten to work with some of TK and kindergarten this year, how important it is to have a lower grown-up teacher to child ratio, especially for the room to feel productive and for there to be focused time on small groups and learning. Our instructional assistants are amazing, and they have really strong relationships with the children and provide such an important presence to both the teacher and the children. And one more note on the option 1 and 2, I just wanted to make note that while Spanish is still on option 1 as a potential program cut, I just wanted to make sure that the impact of cutting Spanish was looked at in terms of how we address diversity to our community and to our overseeing LAUSD. I think the program that Maestra teaches, it's not just Spanish as enrichment of foreign language. There's a real heritage and cultural piece that is part of being an IB school and appreciating, home language, home culture. And I think that's a huge part of being a public school in Los Angeles. Thanks.
Maya?
Hi, I'm Maya Mills. I'm the IA for the TK kindergarten classroom. I work with Lauren. Again, just to reiterate, I want to advocate not only for keeping IAs, but for keeping IAs at full time, especially in the lower grades. I know in the last board meeting, we were looking at some of the enrollment numbers and the potential class size numbers as well. In kindergarten, it looked like be as high as 28 kids in a classroom. And just speaking as someone who worked in a classroom as low as 19 kids, it still felt like sometimes instruction could be incredibly difficult with only one adult there. I can't imagine having up to 28 kids, and especially at the beginning of the year, trying to get any instruction done with only one adult. You know, each kid has their own individual behaviors, and all of them at that age are learning just how to be in school. And, you know, that means just learning how to raise your hand, learning how to stand in line, all these things that make school work so that instruction can happen. And, you know, one of my major roles as an IA outside of the obvious safety, you know, recess and lunch supervision is helping, you know, in my case, helping Lauren be able to actually instruct the kids. So quelling these arguments, having discussions about social emotional behaviors so that we can actually move forward and teach and have the kids learn. I think it's very important, and I just don't know how it would happen with only one adult in there. So that's my piece. Thank you.
And at this time, there's no other public comment. Never mind, we have one more. Kirsten.
Okay.
Okay, I actually just wanted to add to Angel's comment about Spanish. I actually feel exactly the same way. I believe that the Spanish program is not only a value in itself, but it increases the recognition of where we teach in Los Angeles. And it really, I've seen it live, the children with that are from Hispanic speaking families feel appreciated, they have their culture recognized, they're learning about South America, they're learning about Central America. It just adds a completely different perspective to the program that I think is going to be very important for enrollment as well. Thank you.
And one last one now, Francis.
Hi, I just have a quick question for clarification. How many IAs total do we have? And then would you be cutting the IAs from the younger grades or for the older grades, either to part-time or full-time? And that's why, and then I just want to say thank you all for working super hard on this budget. It was very difficult, I'm sure, so thank you.
So currently we have 4 full-time IAs and 2 part-time IAs. The 2 part-time are in 1st grade and the 4 full-time are with kindergarten and TK.
And we would not be cutting them.
So so they wouldn't be cut for the younger grades, just for the older grades? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's a decision that the board will make, I guess.
Okay.
But
Okay,
the recommendation is to not do that.
Okay, thank you.
So Casey, does that conclude public comment?
That concludes public comment, yes.
Thank you, the public, for providing input again. It is much appreciated in this process, which is really not easy. Trust me. So I take this very emotionally, and so thank you for providing the input. Item 7. Items for discussion and action. Approval of cost reduction items in response to 10% funding reduction. Again, this is just a issue and a recommendation. How do you want to do this, Dr. Jones? Do you want to call option 1 and option 2?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we recommend to the Board of Trustees option 2.
Is there any friendly emotion? Any friendly? I second it. Is there any amendment to the motion?
Discussion-wise, I just want to, point out that I'm making a recommendation that is, or the approval of this has to be with the understanding that this is not a balanced budget. and that it puts us at risk of financial problems down the line. It would require pulling down reserves. We would obviously still do everything we do every year of trying to be as frugal as possible and trying to bring that number down if possible. But I think that is balanced with the idea that this is not decimating our program, and yet it's taking some pretty hard knocks. This is a substantial amount of money that is removed at this point. I hope there's a day where you know, different pieces of it can come back. You know, that this is a one-year issue that we're facing, but I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that, oh, well, then we've solved all the problems, because this doesn't solve the problems. It solves a part of the problem. But that being said, I think it's the right direction for us right now to get through our current crisis. And I haven't heard, we haven't asked Ryan to weigh in at all. And I know he's there, but thank you for being here, Ryan. Is there anything you want to add just at this time? I know you probably have some things you need to say from an ex-ed point of view, but anything that you want to add?
Just that, you know, it's a challenging time, and I don't know how long this, you know, I don't know how long the impact of this pandemic will last. I think it's going to last more than a year, you know, to bounce back. We're talking about deferrals of your money. So, you know, spending down reserves for another year, you know, it might be possible, but it's not sustainable for the long run. And, you know, it breaks my heart to have to, you know, talk about budget cuts too. But this is a conversation and a topic that all schools in the state and, you know, the country are having to also deal with. You know, we're not immune to that.
And you've certainly spoken about this in the past.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it in the past, but there's been different things to consider because we've received various recommendations from LAUSD, and there were a lot of different factors to take into account. I've been with the school since day one, and, you know, I know that this program is unique, complicated, and special, you know, so it's not the same as every other school. It also doesn't cost the same as every other school. It is more expensive to run. And, you know, we have had very successful fundraising campaigns. But, you know, we are at the mercy of the state as far as funding for education goes. Other than that, you know, I apologize. I came in towards the end of the discussion about the budget. So I don't really have anything to weigh in about what was presented yet, but it's just going to be a tough year for us, and as a community, we need to figure out how to get through it. Because one thing that I want to see is this school to last for a very, very long time, not just a few more years. So that's my concern. But I know that the board is very adamant about maintaining the culture and maintaining the program. So we'll see what comes of this. I know it's not going to be easy.
Ryan, since I don't think you spoke last time when we had so many guests, can you, and I mean, I know you haven't had a chance to look at it, but if you look at the screen now, you can see some of the reductions being recommended, like reduction in office supplies, reducing furlough, reducing admin pay. Can you comment on what some of the other schools you're working with are doing and proposing, just in general?
Well, it's really hard to cut staff. So one thing that other schools are doing is they're not filling open positions. That's one strategy that they're taking. And then, you know, I saw further down that we were talking about trying to limit the spend on office supplies and things of that nature. So I know they're taking a really hard look at everything that's not directly, you know, touching the kids in the classroom, and trying to limit and reduce, if possible, limit or eliminate, if possible, all of those things that they really can live without. But there are, you know, they are talking about, you know, cutting positions in a lot of the other schools. You know, I don't know, Joe. It's a hard time. Each school has different needs. You know, it's really hard to say, you know, what people are cutting. You know, some of them are, you know, just not planning to do a lot of the things that they used to love to do. You know, like, you know, field trips, they took them out for now. You know, parent engagement gatherings, they removed them for now because they're not certain that they can, and whether or not, you know, there's a lot of forced cuts based on the times that we're living in. You know, there are things that we just simply can't do anymore. You know, even as far as the nutrition program, I don't know what that looks like, you know, how they're going to serve meals in the cafeteria to a lot of kids, you know, and what that cost should be going forward. There's a lot of question marks, but I will say that they're all making tough decisions.
Yep. Thank you, Ryan.
So, you know, just a couple of comments on this one. You know, again, you know, the runway comment. I think this is an initial cut. I have not given up on hope that the revenue stream is going to be reestablished during the year. That we, you know, can come up with some creative ways of additional fundraising. You know, this also assumes that the school is in full session on campus through the entire year. This budget may look a little different, you know, if we have to continue with some shape or form of distance learning. There may be, if it's longer, there may be savings. If it's partially and it requires a lot of cleaning, it would probably drive some additional costs. But this is my final comment on this. I haven't given up hope on the revenue stream, which would be able to allow, which these cuts still would allow us to balance the budget, subject contingent of hitting the enrollment. So with that, if there are no further comment, I want to make the roll call. Who is in favor of the motion? We had Dr. Jones moved it. I seconded. So I'm making the roll call. Joe?
Aye.
Biggie?
Aye.
Dr. Jones?
Aye.
Frank? Aye. So motions for recommendation carries. We're presenting both options, but recommending option 2. New business items. Next steps. Follow-up meeting times. Dr. Jones?
So our next step is that we'll bring this to the Board of Trustees. So the Finance Committee has does not have a next step in terms of the budget. Now it's in the hands of the Board of Trustees, and we will have one quick meeting before the June meeting to look over financials. And Ryan, can you tell us what does that look like for end of year? Is it just the typical June transactions, the June financials?
Just the typical June financials for the end. What do you mean? Sorry.
For the June meeting, do all we need to do is set up a look at the June financials?
Well, in the June meeting, hopefully we'll be looking at the May financials, right? For our forecast as of May, and then as far as the June financials, those you know, we'll present them, you know, as soon as they're made available. But those typically take a little bit longer because we have to wait on final revenue apportionment schedules to book the final accrual entries, and then those can be presented to the board, and they typically are presented to the board around August, around the same time that we have to submit our unaudited actuals to the school district. So we usually present the June financials in August, and after that, we present the audited financials once those are ready, and those are typically ready in the November board meeting.
Okay.
And Ryan, if you're available for just a minute to chat after.
Sure.
Hang on for a sec. I just
Yeah.
need to ask you a question.
Okay. Any other Finance Committee members have any other comments, questions regarding next steps and follow-up meeting times? Joe?
No.
Biggie?
No.
Dr. Jones, you good?
Good.
I'm good too. Then item number 9, adjournment. I move to adjourn the meeting at 5:45. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second, Joe seconds. Make the roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Dr. Jones.
Aye.
Biggie.
Aye.
Frank, aye. Meeting adjourned. It's 5:45. Thank you.